For the benefit of our viewers, we talk about it's autobiographical, it's about your life, but in a nutshell, just to benefit the viewers, what is this book about?
This book is about a woman that has been through a lot, faced a lot of adversity, and it's essentially about the triumph of spirit of adversity against all odds.
Who's Nthepo?
Nthepo is a young lady. I'd like to believe that I still have that. It's a young lady that grew up in Soweto, and I was born in 1976 during the height of everything that was happening, the transition in the country. And I just thought maybe it's time that I captured what I went through so that it can perhaps inspire other women, because what I've been through is not something that you just rise above and say, I made it. It is just purely from the grace that I actually survived every single thing that I went through. And I thought I should put it down to paper so that there are people that go through a lot of things similar to mine, but they're just too scared to talk about them.
To tell the story. And was that the reason why you were compelled to tell the story? And what is that story? What did you go through?
Okay, essentially, this started off as a diary because there was a time when I was dubbed crazy, mentally crazy, and I was actually hospitalized in a mental institution where, sticking around crazy people, but nobody admits when they're crazy.
Sure.
But I want to say openly that I wasn't crazy. But what actually drove me was to have a message for my children so that should anything happen to me, they should know that mommy was not crazy. It was just something that she was going through at the time, and it was something that was being transferred to her. So the transition wasn't going to be an easy one. It had to be a burning one. And that's exactly what I went through. The 21 days essentially is about a woman that went into a mental institution who was not crazy, who was constantly drugged. I was drooling all over the place. But the bottom line is that I know what I went through. It wasn't the first time that experience happened. It's just that it was intense on the last time.
How do you kind of reconcile that internally? Because internally you're saying to yourself that you haven't lost it, you're not crazy. People around you are looking at you like you're crazy. You then put in an institution that deals with people that have mental and emotional problems. How do you reconcile that with? How do you stay sane? That's what I'm asking. How do you manage to stay rooted and say, I have to make it through this?
My understanding of my background, at the beginning of the book, I give a bit of a background regarding my grandmother, who was a prophet at St. John's Apostolic Faith Mission, and she had a gift to see things. She had visions, she had everything, but growing up with somebody like that in the house, you take it for granted. And with me, I didn't see myself as somebody that has to inherit this. Here I am, me and my wine, constantly relationship tight. So when will I have time to be healing anybody? When will I have time to be translating anybody's dreams? I didn't see it I didn't see myself as a candidate, and I was really not keen. But the universe would choose you that's not keen. And I couldn't understand what I was going through because from the age of 7, this had been going on. But I guess I was chosen from birth. Some of these things come with you from birth. And in my case, that was the case. But I was in denial until it brought me down to my knees.
Yeah. You mentioned your gogo, because she's had quite an amazing influence on your life. Half of your life she was influential. She passed on 3 years ago. Just talk to me about that, because she was also strong. And I describe her in my question as very purpose-driven. She comes across as, even with the labels, you cleaning the bottles and there was a target set. She seems to be somebody who is like, this is the goal, let's stick to it. And how did that influence your life?
My grandmother, God rest her soul, she was a matriarch. And she had played a significant role in South Africa as a whole, because she also homed political assailants. And then she accommodated everybody, that including her healing ability. And on the other hand, she has shaped the woman that I am today. She inspired hard work. She motivated us to be who we are today. And I really, really appreciate the role that she's played in my life. It has been really significant. And the fact that she's the one that introduced the concept of praying to our family. And she took it further, that she had a church where people would come and we would all preach and do all sorts. I think that's where the preaching came in, and my ability to speak in public. So my grandmother.
You titled the book 21 Days of Hell, but you start the book off with the history of when you were born. You talk about your family. You even talk about the relationship between your mom and your dad. And he was, as you as you put in the book, he was a bit of a player. He had women all over the place, fathered 2 kids outside of his marriage. And those women then tormented your mom.
Yeah.
You create this balance, but yet you choose to name the book 21 Days of Hell. That kind of, for me, is you get this first sense of somebody who grew up in a very loving environment, and yet you title it something that's what I consider to be something incredibly negative.
It is essentially not negative. The main focus, my main objective was to convey the message of the last part of my journey, the 21 days, which were the motivating factor for me to write this book essentially. But looking at my background, my upbringing, I didn't have a reason to write. But the 21 days was actually the main motivation for me to write. It was an experience that no normal person can really survive, but I did.
And we take our hats off to you. Thank you very much for joining us here this morning. That was author of 21 Days of Hell, Nthepo Ranape, talking to us about something that you actually, in actual fact, have to read. And it's amazing. It's an amazing story. We take an ad break. We'll be back after this.